Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Nancy Drew, Whispers in the Fog. 3. The tale is turned. Open up, the man yelled again, beating hard on the door. I want to talk to you. Bess looked at Nancy, her eyes wide with apprehension. Who could that be? She whispered. Nancy, what'll we do? Nancy felt a shuttle tumble through as her hand held up to Bess. As she walked toward the door, she heard Nora's voice in the hall. Cool down, Ned said from the other side of the door. Who are you? What do you want? I'm Holt Scotto, that's who. The words blasted through the door. Nancy reached for the knob of the door. Scotto was tall, with short hair, bleached straw blonde by the sun, and a small golden hoop in ear. His eyes were narrowed as he stared at Nancy. Ned stepped between them in the doorway. With one sweep of his beefy arm, Scotto pushed Ned aside and continued to glare at Nancy. You're the one asking questions at the diner and down the pier, Scotto said to Nancy. Who are you? What do you want? I'm a friend of Nancy Drew. I'm Nancy Drew, a friend of Katie Firestone, Nancy said. So that's it, Scotto said. I might have known. Why don't you come in, Nancy said. We can talk in this room. There's no point in disturbing the other guests. I can say my piece right here, Scotto declared. How come you're zooming around town? What's Firestone got to do with you? Her boat was vandalized earlier today, Nancy said. From the corner of her eye, she could see Mrs. Opry, the innkeeper, hurrying down the hall. I thought maybe one of the fishermen saw something from a boat and he went in or out of the harbor. Somebody trashed her boat. Scotto said with a snort. Well, I know what happens next. I get hassled by the sheriff. That's always what happens when little Miss Katie has a problem. His face was dark red, partly from the sun. Nancy guessed, but not completely. He seemed very angry. Holt Scotto. Oh, you get out of my inn, Mrs. Opry said. Stop causing such a ruckus or I will call the sheriff on you. You're bothering my other guests. Now get. Look, Mr. Scotto, perhaps the sheriff contacts you because you seem to be the town leader, Nancy said in a soothing voice. It's clear that the other fishermen look up to you. Sheriff Harvey probably figures there's nothing that happens around here that you don't know about. You're pretty smooth, but I'm not buying it, Scott said, his mouth clenched tight above his square jaw. You quit poking around. I'm not warning you again. If you mess with me, you'll be sorry. That does it, Ned said, stepping towards Scotto. Back off. For a moment, it looked as if Scotto might hit Ned, but Ned folded his arms across the chest and gave the intruder a fierce look. Scotto took a half step back, then one last warning glare at Nancy, who stalked away. Are you okay? Ned asked Nancy. Do you want me to follow him out, make sure he leaves? Maybe we should call Sheriff Harvey, Bess added, her voice low. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Opry said. I won't be too worried about Holt. He's got a terrible temper, but his bark's worse than his bite, as they say. He wouldn't really hurt anyone. He's just kind of private. Doesn't like people nosing around his affairs. She gave Nancy and others a warm smile. Can I get you some tea? Well, nothing for me, thanks, Beth said. My nerves are jangling enough. Thanks, Mrs. Opry. We're fine, Nancy said. The innkeeper bustled off to smooth other guests who had gathered in the hall. The guy was creepy, Beth said, and Ned stepped in and closed the door. Nancy, are you sure there isn't something we can do? I don't think we can follow him or call the sheriff, Nancy answered. But he threatened you, Beth protested. Not with anything specific, Nancy said. It didn't lay a hand on any of us. He just made a lot of noise. If Mrs. Opry doesn't want to charge him for disturbing the peace, we don't really have much of a claim. If he does try something later, at least we'll have a lot of witnesses to tonight's threats. Well, Mrs. Opry might think Scotto's just a big blowhard, Ned said, but I'm not so sure. I'm going to call George and tell her what happened, Beth said. She settled down a little at the little desk and made her call. We didn't really get much information on our trip to town, Nancy said, and pulled out her drawing of the business card fragment. You really think that could be something, don't you? Ned said, nodding at that fragment. I do, Nancy said. I know Katie thought it could have been dropped by one of her whale watchers, but it seems too crisp and clean to have been there that long. You're right, Ned said. It doesn't really look like it's been sitting around in a damp boat for a while. If it was dropped by someone who vandalized Katie's boat, then that person may be staying in a motel, Nancy pointed out. That would seem to rule out a local culprit. She checked the telephone book. There's only one place around here that could possibly match the business card. She said, pointing to the name, the Abalone Motel. It's about 10 miles down the coast road. You can run down there tomorrow. Count me out, Ned said. I promise to help rehab the boat. I'll go, Beth said, joining them after a phone call. Just don't forget the breakfast at Katie's, Ned said, walking to the door. Tomorrow morning, lobby downstairs, 8:15. Never mind them, as he left to go to his room. After he left, Beth and Nancy talked a little as they fell asleep. Over eggs and muffins at Katie's the next morning, they talked about the investigation in town in confrontation with Holt Scotto. The fisherman on the pier said the strangest thing, Beth reported. He gave us a goofy warning, saying to enjoy our stay, but to be careful of sneakers. What do you suppose he meant? I know exactly what he meant, Katie said. There are these waves along the stretch of the coast. They're called sneaker waves. They seem to come out of nowhere with no warning. Hikers and shell collectors get swept out of the sea right by them. Are you serious? Ned asked. Deadly serious, Katie said. The locals have a slogan they always tell visitors. Stay alert, keep escape routes in mind, and never turn your back on the ocean. So how have you never told us about yesterday when we were on the beach? George said, poking her friend in the side of their elbow. Because we were in a cove protected by those huge rock formations, Katie pointed out. By the time we get the waves get to shore there, they've been cut down by rocks. Those rocks are something, Beth said. They're so huge and rise out of the ocean. Technically, they're called sea stacks, or just stacks, Katie said, and you haven't been to anything yet. Wait till we go to a place I want to use for kayak training. It has a whole lot of hills of rock coming up out of the water. One even has grass and the wildflowers grow on top of it. There are several that are hollowed out like the tunnels and huge, big enough to take my boat through. That sounds like fun to explore, George said. You have to be careful though, Katie warned. There are sea caves, which are hollowed out rock formations. They're also just like land caves, except the floor is water. They can be pretty spooky on the inside, just like any cave. Speaking of training, Ned said, finishing his eggs, I'm ready. I've still got a lot of work to do on the boat, Katie said. It's a real mess, George added. They even tampered with the engines. I've got to get it fixed, Katie said. It's my income, and I need... The ringing phone interrupted her, but from where they sat, Nancy and the others could hear Katie's end of the conversation. Well, hello, Mr. Jason, Katie said. I wondered whether you'd be calling again. It's been at least 3 days since I heard from you. Nancy could hear the sarcasm in Katie's voice. No, I haven't changed my mind, Katie said firmly. I like my business just the way it is. I intend to stay independent. There was a brief silence while Katie listened to her caller. No way, Mr. Jason. All right, Andy. There's no need to call me anymore. My decision is final. Thanks. Katie hung up on the phone and returned to the table. Andy Jason, she told the others. He owns a small fleet of whale watching his surgeon's boats up and down the coast. He's been trying to get me to shut down my business and go work for him. Or at least buy into one of his franchises. But you don't want to, George asked. No way, Katie said. Andy Jason's pretty aggressive, though. Doesn't like anyone to tell him no. I think he wants all the whale watching businesses from San Francisco to Oregon. Do you think that he might be doing all this bad stuff to you, George asked. It's one way to get rid of the competition. George has a point, Katie, Nancy said. I did catch him snooping around my boat once, but I don't know. Well, if he's trying to drum me out of business, it won't work, Katie announced. I'll never work for Andy Jason. I like being my own boss because I can decide when I take tourists out and when I can take the day off for kayaking. Speaking of kayaking, Ned repeated. Definitely a one-track mind, Nancy groaned. I was going to say I could help you with the entire boat repairs this morning, Katie, Ned offered. I figured the sooner we get the Ripper seaworthy, the sooner we can climb into the kayak cockpits. Wonderful, Katie said. How about you, George? Ready for more work? I'm in for the duration, George said with a lopsided grin. I'm going to the Abalone Motel to check it out, Nancy said, but then I'll report for duty. I'll go keep Nancy company, Beth said, but after that you can count on me too. Well, with all this help, we're bound to be finished soon, Katie said. Thanks a lot, guys. It was nearly noon by the time Nancy and Beth finally left their drive down to the coast. It was a beautiful day. Nancy and Bess had both grabbed sweatshirts. So far, t-shirts and jeans were all they needed for this warm late January sun. Twice, Nancy held on to a scenic overlook so Bess could snap a photo of the majestic hills and sea. All I know is, Bess started to say, interrupting herself when she glanced at Nancy. What is it? She said. What do you see? Bess started to turn around, but Nancy stopped her. No, don't look out in the back. Nancy stared in the rear mirror. You're scaring me, Nan, Bess whispered. She hunched down a little in her seat and said, Come on, what are you looking at? Who is it? Is it Holt Scotto? I'm not sure. I'm not even sure he's following us. Well, when I slow down, he slows down. When I drive faster, he speeds up too. Nancy accelerated up a hill. She began her descent on the other side. She realized that her car and the one following her were the only two on the road for as far as she could see. She glanced at the other car in the mirror. It was a rusty old red Mustang, and it was barreling down the hill at her. He's coming faster, Nancy said. She felt her breathing speed up too. She pressed down on her accelerated speed a little harder. She looked up again. The car was charging toward her, filling her rear view mirror. That's the end of that chapter. See you later.